All right, it's a couple minutes after 10, so if anybody else shows up in the next few minutes, they can just join us mid-stride. So good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody to our virtual roundtable discussion this morning focused on restaurants and dining. This is now the 5th session of our Re-Engaging the Rural Economy virtual roundtable series. Really the focus is a discussion on best practices as we ramp up our businesses in our communities. We had a great 3 sessions last week focused on HR and talent, manufacturing, and community leadership. And this week we're pivoting squarely towards our Main Street type businesses. Our discussion yesterday for the retail sector was really informative. I've had a lot of good feedback from that one yesterday. My name is Travis Alden, Director of Business Development at The Right Place and the lead for our rural team. Just as a quick introduction for today, the purpose of this virtual roundtable is twofold. We really realize the value in connecting all of you with your peers, not just locally, but regionally as well. We all work in small communities throughout West Michigan and certainly have many things in common. So let's learn from each other so we can all be as prosperous as possible as we re-engage our economy. The intent for this session today is to be more of an interactive discussion, not a sit and get type of webinar. So the more we can all share ideas of what we're doing to be successful, I think the more valuable this time will be for everybody. And then secondly, today's discussion will assist our rural economic development team at The Right Place in identifying what's going on in the communities for different business sectors and that sort of thing to further help us refine our work and the assistance that we can provide to businesses in the communities that we serve. At The Right Place, we really value collaboration, especially in our rural efforts. So you may not be aware, but the state of Michigan is divided up into 10 different prosperity regions. And the region there, Region 4 on the west side of the state, that's where we work. The map on the left-hand side, you can see the 6 counties that The Right Place serves directly, but really the whole 13-county region there communicates pretty regularly and works with each other on a fairly regular basis. And with that, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our rural team at The Right Place. They're small but mighty, but they're awesome. And so Julie, Jody, and Kathy Jo, you guys want to introduce yourselves real quick?
Sure. Go ahead. I'm Jody, and I serve Oceana and Lake counties, and it's great to see businesses from those counties here on the call. Thanks for joining us.
Julie Burrell here from Newaygo County, and I will ditto that. Good to see some local folks on the call.
And I'm Kathy Jo Vanderlaan, the feet on the street in Montcalm County, and at risk of getting in trouble here, I failed to mention this really was Travis's brainchild, and he's going to get all embarrassed, but honestly, he really has rural in his blood. And so this was his brainchild, and Julie Burrell has been kind of our technology person. So I'm just kind of sitting and enjoying this and just very glad we're able to do this.
Oh, thanks, KJ. I appreciate it. And as I said, I'm Travis, director of the rural team, and also I'm the boots on the ground serving Ionia County. And then the folks who you're really here to learn from today, Diane and Justin, our special guest co-hosts who are out in their establishments, making it work on a daily basis. So Diane and Justin, you guys want to say hi real quick?
Good morning. Hello, everyone. I'm Diane Schindlbeck from Lakes 23 in Fremont. Great to be here and excited to share some stories.
Morning, everybody. My name is Justin Straube. I own the seasonal Grille and Church and Main in Hastings and Berry County. Welcome.
All right, so thanks again for being here, you guys. Just a little bit of housekeeping for today, just to make everything go as smoothly as possible. Please mute yourself as kind of the default during the discussion in order to limit background noise. I'll hit the mute all feature as needed. If you're unfamiliar with Zoom, as we were talking through with Justin earlier, you can adjust how you're seeing everybody. So you can do it as a grid view. You can do it to where just the speaker is up. We don't have a lot of like PowerPoint stuff today, so feel free to leave it as grid if you kind of want to see everybody who's on. We had about 70 individuals registered for today, which is awesome. So if we can have it be kind of more free discussion, just kind of feel out when it's a good time to answer, to ask a question, feel free. Or I'm happy to facilitate Q&A. If you want to shoot any questions to me in the chat feature, you can do it to me directly. Or if it's something that more just kind of general conversation or as an FYI for folks, you can do it under you can shoot it out to everybody as well using that chat feature. If at any time you need to exit the discussion, feel free to do so. We're going to try to keep this to about an hour, but we've had a couple of them that there's been some really healthy conversation going at the end of that hour, and so we've continued a little bit further. But if you need to get off at 11, feel free to do so. And whenever you're speaking for the first time, if you just want to briefly introduce yourself, where you're from, what your business is, just for context, I think that would be important. So to kind of kick this off, I think it's safe to say that no industry has been immune to the impacts of the COVID-19 crisis, perhaps none more so than the restaurant sector. Our dining establishments, I think we'd all agree, are really the lifeblood of our downtowns and commercial districts, and I'd argue are really the anchors of the vibrancy of our communities as well. I'm really looking forward to today's discussion as one that will help everyone navigate this complicated issue of reopening in order to be as prosperous as possible. So Diane comes to us today from a recommendation from Julie in Newaygo County. Julie, you want to intro Diane real quick?
Yeah, so as we were kind of, going through the process of figuring out what these sessions would look like, one of the first ones that came to mind was Lakes 23, and I'm really excited for Diane to share some of the best practices that she's been able to do during this crisis. And I really think it's just been pretty innovative how she's focusing on first responders and really just doing the best that she can for her customers. So Diane, you want to share some of the great things you're doing?
Thank you, Julie. Yes, so my husband and I just purchased Lakes 23 in August of last year. We are a casual fine dining steakhouse on a golf course in Fremont, and we've never owned a restaurant before. My background is event planning. That's what my past has been. And so when my husband and I took over the restaurant 7 months ago, here we are faced with what all of us are faced with today, the COVID. And we sat down the very first week that this happened, and we were looking forward to March. Golf course would be opening up, would have our first experience of dining on the patio, getting the beverage cart going. And we sat down with the team, and first we wanted to make sure that our employees were taken care of. So we sat down with each of them independently and wanted to know where they stood. Were they going to be taken care of? Because even though we have a lot of part-time employees in this industry, our kitchen staff and our manager are full-time employees. They're fathers, they're parents, they have families. And so we sat down as a team and we're like, what are we going to do to prevail through this and to keep you employed? So it was actually my husband that came up with the idea. He suggested we first looked at, we said the children are taken care of right now because we know our schools are implementing the lunch program. We knew that it would be very difficult to try to assist the elderly during this time because the access to different care facilities would be very challenging and difficult. So my husband came up with the idea of the first responders, and we reached out to our state senator, John Bumstead, and said, here's what we want to do. We want to provide meals to the first responders during this time. Who should we be in touch with to implement this, to make sure that we're not doing something that's already being done? So he hooked us up with the gal, Abby, who runs the Newaygo County Emergency Response Team and Services. And we started right away. John Bumstead, our senator, made a personal donation to us the very first day to buy meals. And it started out with only 36 meals that were going to be provided on a daily basis. So the very first Saturday of after March 16th, we delivered meals twice a day to the Sheriff's Department. And then from there, every day it has grown. So now we are delivering 87 complimentary free meals every single day to our first responders in the county. We do the Sheriff's Department, each city police department, Life EMS, ambulance, the courthouse once a week, dispatch, correction officers. And we've been able to do this all on our tips and donations from our community. And what this has done is it has kept 4 of our full-time employees employed, and it's just been a great feel-good story. And it's really kind of another great, it was such a win-win, but another great win for this is the county also, when they reached out to me a couple weeks ago and asked if they could, if I would be willing to share the information, the financial information of what we have given in contributions in food to the county, because they are able to, when they apply for their grants through FEMA, they are able to include this, so that is money that FEMA will give back to the county to those departments for emergency responses. So it's been it's more money coming into the county, it's kept employees employed, and it's been taking care of our first responders every day. So it's been a really, really good thing for the last 8 weeks. Any questions? But you know, one of the things that has been amazing, we just did, these first responders are coming back to us as well. I mean, they're appreciating it. Like, they'll say to us on a daily basis, we keep telling you thank you, but you would not believe how much this truly means to us, because they're working 12 or 24-hour shifts, and to provide them with a hot meal every single day. Even our restaurant is closed on Sundays and Mondays, and that's when my husband and I personally bring them meals on those 2 days. So it's been something pretty amazing. Gives you some good feeling through these difficult times.
So Diane, that's awesome that you're doing that. I think bravo to you from all of us here for doing that. So obviously that's a significant impact for those folks that you're serving in that capacity. How is that translating to kind of the public at large from a, you know, perception of your business and that sort of thing? I know that's heavy on your social media right now.
It is, and what we did when we decided we were going to do this, there was another, being in a small community, we only have a few restaurants, and we did know that one was going to be closing the very first week. So we want to continue to build these relationships and help each other out, and it's just amazing seeing our community come together. So we reached out to the restaurant that was going to be closing, the first one that was going to close, and instead of placing supply orders through our vendors, I went to them and I purchased whatever I could purchase from them. If it was to-go containers, if it was dry storage, I'd much rather give them the money than to our vendors. I wanted to support local. And what we have continued to do is it brought in our local grocery store, who we do use as a supply when we run out of things here locally. And they, every week, they're bringing us their baked goods that are going to be going, you know, close to the shelf date. So we get bread from them, we get any baked goods that we can use. So we incorporate that into the meals that we're going to prepare for the first responders. So the community has been giving back to us in other ways, not only in monetary, financial, and support, but also other restaurants like one day last week, Sunday or Monday, we have a little pizza place here in town. Instead of my husband and I making the meals, we bought pizzas from them and brought their pizzas over to the first responders. And so that way we could help support another business here in town as well. So it's just been a great, you always see in times of need when people come together, and it's just surrounding us just in abundance right now. It's just been amazing. We have every tip that we have that we receive during our takeout and delivery right now goes to help cover those costs. And then whenever, you know, some days we have, you know, we'll get some nice donations, and other days we don't, but we just pick up the cost from there, and we just made a commitment that this will happen, and we'll continue to do this until we're able to open back up.
So Diane, that kind of, I hate to be that guy. So I'm just going to ask that question because there's a lot of other restaurants and other establishments that one of the things I love about what you're doing, obviously it pulls on the heartstrings of everybody in the community and everybody in the region. And I love that because it builds loyalty, it builds commitment to an organization. And I always say in the time of need, look for the good in people. And I think that's what you're doing. But at the end of the day, you still have a mortgage to pay, you still have rent to pay, you still have utilities to pay, you still have your vendors to pay. So are you able to sustain this kind of outreach on that charitable, outreach right now? Are you able to sustain this for a period of time? And have you done a kind of a projection on what you need to do to sustain that? Because you'd probably rather have a full restaurant, a full deck, and have a beverage cart and have all those things. And that's why you bought that restaurant or are committed to that restaurant, is to have all those things. So you built a budget based on those things. What are you having to do to adjust? And then is it sustainable?
Very good questions, Eric. And I guess the way my husband and I looked at this is, especially in the beginning, we thought maybe it'll be a couple of weeks, then, 3 weeks, then 4, now we're into week 8. So far, we're believers. I mean, we just put our faith in God that this was just going to be okay and that he would take care of it. And so far, we've been so lucky and so blessed that this has happened. But you're right. We have to keep looking forward. And what are we going to do if this goes on for, 8 more weeks? So right now, we have been able to make ends meet with our costs and keeping the 4 employees employed. And so far we've been okay. But at the end of the day, that's going to keep, we all know in the restaurant business, there's weeks where we're like, oh my gosh, please get that deposit in there so I can make payroll. We all have those days, and that's where we were in February. That's why we were looking forward to March, because nice weather, bring the golf course here. So far now, as of yesterday, golf carts are out on the golf course. We're starting to get innovative on how we can, and figuring out legally what are we able to do with these golfers. Now, that was the one thing in the very beginning I thought would be in our favor that the other restaurants in our community would not have, is I thought, oh, well, we'll have golfers and I'll be able to serve them food and drinks and no one will be working, so they'll all be golfing. But with state laws, we could not do, first there with the executive order, we couldn't bring the golf carts on, and then there wasn't even any golfers at first. And then we couldn't do the food, then we couldn't do beverages. So we kept hitting these brick walls, but now golf carts are out there. We can serve them food. I'm hoping the weather is going to get nice where we can be down on the patio and operating our grill, so we can do the hot dogs, the burgers, the barbecues and things like that to continue to feed. So we're banking on luck right now, Eric. So very good questions. But one thing that we know, as I'm sure all of us are thinking right now, how are we going to continue to think outside of the box and be creative? And one of the things that I decided we're going to do is, one, I think we're going to have to continue to do deliveries. I think people are, they're liking it. You go into cities, people have Uber Eats. We don't offer that in our small community, but I think it's something that people are going to start expecting and start wanting. So we have to figure out a plan on how we're going to continue to provide that service. The other thing that I'm going to sit down this week and do is, Cisco is one of our main vendors that we work with, and they sent a nice little thing on the pop-up shops and supplies for people that they normally can't get. Maybe we can get that and kind of have like a little bit of a store within our restaurant. Our Mother's Day and Easter heat and serve meals were a great hit, where we just put them in foil pans and they were able to just purchase that and go home and warm it up. That was a big hit this past weekend. So I think coming up with creative ideas like that, how to start selling other items that the community may need, and then again, if we can deliver those, it kind of worked just like, you know, Meijer is doing ship and all of that. So those are things that we have to, I think, implement and start creating, because we still don't even have all of the guidelines on when can we reopen, and is it going to be our tables 6 feet apart? Is it outdoor dining? Is it, you know, percentage of our occupancy? So instead of waiting for those answers to come to us, I'm going to get creative and come out of the box and open up a store within our restaurant.
I'll tell you, from a guy that's tired of cooking for 4 or 5 at home, if you could put a Lexan pan together for a dinner for 4 that I could just heat at home, I'd pick it up every day of the week. Or if you could deliver it, you got my business.
Thank you.
At least twice a week.
Yes, yes. And that's how people are feeling. They're tired of cooking at home.
I'm not kidding when I say that. Any restaurant that packages a dinner for 4 or 5, I'm a buyer. I don't even care what kind of price tag you put on it these days. I'm a buyer.
And I guess one of the other things, you guys, that was, and I don't know if they want the publicity, but I think everyone in our town knows that they're doing this. Fremont is the home of Gerber, and what they have chosen to do is all of their employees, their company is still working, so they have, you know, 2 shifts of 200 employees that are still working. They graciously, every week they have chosen a restaurant here in town and bought lunch for all of their employees. So last week, that was a nice jump in our, you know, and those were paid for meals. So I'm like, oh, you won't believe how much we appreciate this, because this will get us through these times, you know. So that helped cover our expenses and our payroll for the next, you know, hopefully next couple of weeks. But other companies doing things like that and paying it forward, we're just hoping that more people can continue to do that as well.
So I think, Diane, what you said in terms of really kind of thinking outside the box and being creative moving forward, I think that's probably a good segue for me to introduce Justin from the Seasonal Grill in Hastings, give him an opportunity to say a few things before we get into kind of general discussion. So Justin's somebody that I worked with pretty regularly when I was working in Berry County with their Chamber and Economic Development Alliance. Very innovative individual, very innovative restaurant in the historic downtown, very supportive of the community. And from what I've been seeing, he's been doing some pretty innovative stuff over the last 2 months with his business. So Justin, you want to take it from there?
I will, thank you. So Diane had mentioned a little bit about the market. So when this all hit, we did maybe 2 to 3% business when it came to takeout. Never did delivery, never thought about delivery. Obviously, when this hit, I had about 35 employees. We ended up taking volunteers and kind of started with the full-time people, maybe single moms, you know, maybe people that were a little bit, say, not as good off as what others were, and we would take volunteers for the individuals that wanted to work. The individuals that didn't want to work, that was their choice, not ours. We wanted to make sure that the families were taken care of within our establishment. So that was our first step. Once we gained volunteers, which was only about 8 people, because honestly, you get that mix of people that are worried about their families, or maybe live at home with their folks, or stay with their grandparents. And obviously, those are the individuals that can get this quicker than anybody else, right? Older individuals, young families, so on and so forth. So they wanted to stay home. They didn't want to risk the chance of getting anyone sick. So after those 35, I ended up with about 8. Going from 35 to 8 was saying, it's rough. So you definitely step into that world of being creative. So the pop-up shop, which is something that Cisco started to push out, I didn't agree with it at first. When you go to a grocery store, you walk into Walmart, you walk into Family Fare here locally, obviously now you can see that all the meat shelves are empty. And obviously that plays a factor on us and what we can get as well. So it starts pushing you into being a little bit creative. And as Diane was saying, you need to get those things in if they're available for individuals in the community. So what we did is in our entryway in the front of our restaurant, I don't know if those of you have seen it, but we had a very large opening where people can come in, kind of mingle, meet the hostess, and go to their tables, which obviously isn't being used anymore. So what we did is we set up a bunch of small tables. We brought in fresh produce. We brought in paper products. I've done meat packs with, like, I call them grill packs. So I had some steaks and some burgers. We've done local honey from a company that I use regularly from the farmer's market. We've done quite a few different items just to kind of trial and error to see what works and to help the community get what they want to get that they can't get at the grocery stores. Another thing that we had done is we went completely takeout and delivery, obviously, but with that, I have a system that we use for our POS. It's called Toast. And Toast already had the system built into place. We just never used it. So it was literally this flip of a button. It made us go live online. Everything is now done virtually. They can still call into the restaurant, but it helps alleviate all that stress levels that you have at the restaurant where you need multiple employees. You can do it with those 8 people. So my normal staff for a shift, I'm running about 11. I think we're open from 11 to 8 right now. So I cut my hours back a little bit. I have 1 server in the front of the house to answer phones and to pack takeouts if need to be. And then I have 3 people in the back of the house that runs my kitchen. And then we brought in a driver occasionally to go from there. We run about a 6 to 8 mile radius. It keeps us busy. We're making, 30 to 35% of total sales of what we used to make, which is a significant difference. But we've had to make those adjustments to make sure that those costs fall to offset that 35%. We've been able to maintain, and I emphasize maintain because the new goal, as we all know, is break even right now. It's not a profit margin. So that's what we've had to do, to kind of move forward and continue to move forward. We're more of an upscale restaurant. So, we do the courses, we're 3 to 5 course meals when you come into the restaurant. We used to do, great wine dinners every month. We do a wine dinner, have 70, 80 people come in, do a 5-course meal. Now what we're doing are pickup wine dinners. So people can come in, get a brand new bottle of wine for each course. Like Diane was saying, we pack it into metal containers. I haven't done the take and bakes yet because I've got mixed reviews on that, just because some people don't want to cook, some people do want to cook. So, we just kind of stayed with what we've been doing, and it's working well for us.
So Justin, how does the Church in Maine concept fit in with all this?
So Church in Maine was actually a new concept that I had started probably 3 months prior to this whole epidemic. What it was going to be is strictly virtual. They call them virtual kitchens or ghost kitchens. They're very large out in California area, and they started to work their way here. I'm a school teacher as well. I teach culinary, and it was one of the programs that I was teaching in culinary, just kind of bringing these new concepts into the area. So I started designing Church in Maine as a total virtual. There is no customer contact. They literally go to a website, they place their orders. It comes to us by KDS screen in the kitchen. I mean, literally, there's nothing we have to do. Once it hits the KDS, we push a little button, says fulfill. Customer gets a text, says, hey, they're on their way. We deliver their food. I mean, that's the whole process. It's very, very simple. We had kind of a crash course in that, after 3 months of designing this and working on it, and then the epidemic hit, then by God, guess what? It was time to start it sooner than I expected. So we do a very limited menu with Church in Maine. It's more fun foods. We do Mexican foods for this one. So we've got burritos and street tacos, handhelds are important, and people love it. Right now, unfortunately, doing takeout and doing delivery, you realize what the costs are when it comes to something like that. Before, we never really thought about a takeout container. Yeah, it's 28 or 38 cents. We know that. Well, we didn't go through them enough to look at that cost factor. Now, I'm going through 600 or 800 takeout containers a week. And it's like, hey, this cost is there. Now, how do we adjust, or how do we, make those changes to make sure we control that?
So I had a couple of questions come in through chat. Unless anybody has a burning question they want to ask right now before I get into those. Anybody? If not, okay. One question that came through, and kind of to piggyback what Eric said, I don't mean to be that guy, but regarding safety. So, the question that came through is, when the time is right where the public is coming into the establishment again, they're really focused on what they can do to keep their staff safe. So, you know, you hear stories about customers refusing to adhere to PPE and requested safety precautions and that sort of thing. Any thoughts or suggestions, or maybe what you guys are thinking through with on that end from the safety perspective for your teams?
Right now, we require mask employees. We require all work surfaces to be washed every 30 minutes, all door handles, anything that we're doing. Even delivery drivers are wearing masks. Now, what we're doing is trying to stay ahead of this like I've done. And I've been through and we've put in all new motionless hand sanitizer stations. And it's not only for the employees, it's actually for the customers when they come in too. So we have one by the front entryway. We have one in the main court door. We have them over by the bathrooms. So that'll help as well. And then we've also moved to motionless paper towel dispensers as well, because nobody, I mean, it's going to get to that point where people are going to have that fear. And of course, it's about keeping your customers safe, but it's also, as you said, keeping the employees safe. So we're trying to stay ahead of that to keep these changes moving forward to make sure everybody maintains those safety levels.
And something that we did too is we have multiple access points into the restaurant, and the first week people were coming for the curbside pickups, coming in from all these different angles, and I knew right from the get-go that we were going to take this opportunity to completely clean our facility. So we totally started disinfecting, doing a lot of different cleaning, but then we blocked off all of our other access points and created an area by one of the entry areas, and I had a sneeze guard built that went on a table area where you come into the restaurant, so that way it'll just kind of give another security too. So it was done nicely. Our construction team put it together for us, and just kind of like at a bank teller, what we're seeing at the grocery stores, and having all of the, like as Justin was mentioning, all of the hand sanitizers and motion towels and everything has to be hands-free now. I think that's really going to be and just knowing that people are seeing that you're cleaning and wiping things down, where we're constantly wiping the hard surfaces, the door handles, and just if they see that we're taking these precautions, and you can really tell, I can tell over the last 7 weeks, the customers who are more intimidated by what's going on, you know, you can see when they're coming in, you can kind of read them and feel what they're feeling, and it's just totally being in tune to them. And the ones that are more cautious, make sure you're taking those and respecting that and taking those added measures to make them feel safe and comfortable coming to your establishment.
So this kind of dovetails with that, and this is, I guess, kind of for everybody. You know, for those of us not in the industry, myself as one, you kind of see things come through, everything from, you know, the stories of people putting up like clear shower curtains between tables and that sort of thing, to what was it, something over in Europe where they were doing like little like greenhouses or something outside just to keep people, to keep people separated. What are folks doing here to address that? I mean, there's definitely not a one size fits all, but I'm sure that's something that would be interesting for folks to hear, kind of what people are planning to do in their establishments. And that's open for anybody here.
Travis, I could share, I have a client, Mexican restaurant in Grand Rapids, who she's ordered the wireless thermometers, and she said she knows this will be controversial, but she's not only taking the temp of her staff as they come in, but also every guest that comes into the restaurant is her plan, at least initially. And she said, I know that'll be off-putting to some folks, but she said they have the ability to take food as carry out if they don't like that or go elsewhere. But her attitude was, I'm not comfortable taking my 83-year-old mother to a restaurant that isn't putting in place some pretty stringent efforts.
We have been talking with our Cisco rep and reading what's coming out of Washington, and we have already ordered paper menus. We're going to go to disposable menus for the time being, when we can start dining. So no multiple use, reuse menus. We've taken all our salt and pepper shakers, our sugar shakers, any tabletop stuff is gone that would be common use. We've got salt and pepper packets, sugar packets, all of those things to try and alleviate any common touch stuff. And then, as everyone else has said, we have sanitizer stations, disinfecting doorknobs, regularly, countertops, common touch items. I have a 60-seat diner, so if they allow us to open at 25%, that's only 15 people. So I've started the process with our zoning for Lake Odessa to add some patio tables, because I'm right on the main street. So thankfully we have wide enough sidewalks where when the weather's nice, we can add some outdoor seating, because I don't have a patio or anything like that. And they're being great to work with right now. So we can add maybe 4 tables out in front of our restaurant to try and increase some capacity a little bit.
Hey, Travis, I think one of the things that might be helpful for a lot of our restaurants and even our retail folks and the folks that are trying to get reopened, and I think the CDC has this, and we may have talked about it another call, but there's a some documentation on surface life expectancy for the coronavirus, and whether it's on a hard surface or a cloth surface, or so when a customer comes in and starts making accusations about how often is that surface clean, these restaurateurs and things could say, well, that's a hard surface and the CDC recommends this cleaning process for that, or that's a cloth surface, and that is, it would be helpful, I think, in a sense that they would know what those protocols are dictated by the most respected authority in that field, so they would have a great response. Because here's what happens with a lot of these pandemics and these uncertain times: misinformation leads to panic, leads to fear, leads to more spiraling, conflict. And it would be helpful, I think, if we had, just common surfaces that a lot of these restaurants are going to come in contact with, that they would know what's the protocol for each one of those common surfaces, so they would be able to respond when a customer or a employee knows, what are those protocols for cleaning. Just a thought.
I have a comment. This is Scott Faulkner with Scott and Robin from the Riverstop Cafe in Newaygo. I think one of the things that Diane said that makes a lot of sense is that you really have to be sensitive and mirror your clientele with their expectations regarding sanitary situations, because at least in our county, you've got a wide range of folks that believe the pandemic is not even real, to folks that won't even leave their home no matter what you do. I think the issue that those of us that depend on atmosphere or the dining experience for people have a really difficult balance, because if you dress up your restaurant, it's in a historic building, perhaps like Justin's place, and it turns out to look like an emergency department, no one's going to want to go to your restaurant anyway, no matter how well you're open. So the balancing act is, how do you preserve your atmosphere, provide a reasonable level of sanitation for reasonable employees and reasonable customers, and just hope for the best. Sooner or later, we're going to have to open, and we should be thoughtful about it, but not in such a way that it compromises the reason that we're in the restaurant business in the first place.
You don't want to dine in an emergency room, Scott?
I don't ever want to go into an emergency room again. Been there a few times.
And
thanks, Eric.
Scott, to chime in on that, I mean, I'm not sure how many, I'm sure all of you have received the roadmap to reopening, that 40-page booklet. I think we are all in a very difficult situation, because just reading through that, there is fear in us as business owners as what can and can't we do? I mean, and to go through that and to try to plan on all of these, some of these just ideas and everything. And as you look around your facility and trying to figure out what's going to be the good fit, exactly what you were saying, Scott, because some people, you go from one perspective to the other, and to make it the majority of people to feel comfortable. But I know as a business owner, when I started reading that roadmap, you know, it was like, wow, where do I even begin? You know, where do I begin to put my restaurant back together? And something that a friend of mine lives down in Winter Garden down in Florida. And what they did last week when the restaurants were able to reopen, and I thought this was very innovative of the municipalities, they took the parking spots downtown, closed them off, and now made that outdoor dining. So that way restaurants could reopen, have patio space, took away the parking area. And I thought that was just such a great win. So businesses and diners who have storefronts on sidewalks in cities, I hope other cities do something like that, where they just make it accessible for businesses to be able to have more seating capacity and other opportunities to start getting some revenue. We're sitting in we're kind of lucky in our situation. Our capacity is 203 people. We have a large building. So if we go down in our capacity, we have a lot of space that we could utilize to make those larger areas and space people out. Where I look at some of our colleagues here in town where they just have a tiny little restaurant, and I don't know what they're going to be able to do if they drop their capacity. They'll only be able to have, 10 customers in their facility. So different challenges for different real estate as well.
So Diane, you mentioned capacity and that sort of thing. I think that's a good segue to Tina in Portland. You had a couple questions regarding operational capacity, and then also kind of a neat idea about outdoor seating. You want to mention that?
So I am connected to food and beverage and throughout Ionia County, and a lot of the establishments that I've spoken with, as we utilize their takeout and so on, have expressed a very large concern that just due to baseline costs, let alone the added costs of personal protective equipment and sanitation, that they don't feel that they could open at a 25% or even a 50% capacity. So I just didn't know what maybe some of your thoughts are there. And I mean, many of them have, it feels like, made a decision that they won't reopen at those capacities, that they will try to hang on and wait for a full reopening, which I don't know when or if that's coming. And then beyond that, if there are parks close to or adjacent to your eating establishments, would a city placing the picnic tables that they have available at 6 feet distances in those areas, would that be helpful to your establishments? Because I can see a concern where some would say, yes, please, let's use the parking spaces for outdoor dining, but others would say, where the heck are my customers going to park when they pull up to get their takeout? So those kind of things.
So I guess that's a good question. What are folks thinking now in terms of, okay, I think I can make it work at 25%, or I think I can make it work at 50. What are folks' thoughts on that?
I don't think you can.
Travis, I don't mean to interrupt, but I've been trying to just to let the group know who we are and what we're trying to do with the MRLA and legislation. My name is Mary Mikowski. My husband is Mike Mikowski, and our company is Star Safety Shield that came about through the pandemic. And we're a company that we do business in the airports with our high quality barriers and shields. And we've recently transitioned into countertops and partitions. And so what we're proposing is a pathway. We're talking with the MRLA, and we will be joining soon when we have pictures with our dining partitions. But to consider this as a mitigation effort to allow the tables not to be separated, to put the partition in between, so your capacity could be 80%. So we're working really hard to get this idea up the chain. And if anybody has any questions, you know, do let us know as far as from you guys being restaurant owners, because we feel your pain. We're here in Manistee and we have friends in the restaurant business, and they're just like 25–50% is just not going to make it in some cases. You know, a lot of people are being creative like you guys are doing, but we want to be an advocate. So our product is here, we're ready, and we are installing all kinds of shields in every business except restaurant right now, because we understand, you know, there's just no cut and dry method to say, yes, let's do these. And we'd like to work with some investors or banks that can help us to help you guys. Our idea was to be able to get purchase orders from restaurants and give them a net 90, but we're not a cash cow company. So we'd like some creative financing suggestions if anybody has any.
Yeah, so definitely options out there in terms of getting creative for, like Mary said, partitions and ways to do that kind of thing.
I'd like to say something on this if possible. My name is Jim Pankovitz. I'm a former retired health inspector from District 10 Health Department. I worked there for 29 years, and the emphasis is I'm a former employee. I'm not a government employee anymore. I'm retired, but the CDC has developed some guidance regarding reopening. And of course, that has been kind of hidden from folks like us, but I believe the AP Associated Press, and I have a copy of it up here on my laptop, has some guidance which is a lot shorter than the Michigan document, which is for reopening. This one is a total of 17 pages, and just a small section of that is restaurants. And it addresses things like monitoring employees' health, which of course we're all supposed to be doing anyway. And as well as spacing of seats. There are a lot of weasel words in the document, as I call them, a lot of mays and if and under best circumstances, but it is something. That's all.
No, thank you for that, definitely. Jennifer and Barry, you wanted to bring up payroll protection?
Yeah, so as we're learning more about the payroll protection program, we're starting to get questions about the fact that 75% of the forgivable portion needs to be spent on payroll. And given that restaurants aren't open at the full capacity, I wanted to see if this is something that we are dealing with regionally. I don't know how many restaurants have taken advantage of that program, but is this something that the chambers and EDOs should be advocating for change? And has anybody found any loopholes in that system?
I have a quick response on that. We were fortunate enough to get a fairly substantial PPP forgivable loan. But as was mentioned, if you're not back up to full staff, it's a little hard to burn 75% of that on payroll. But what we did find is it's been terribly useful for the other 25%, which is for utilities, things like rent or mortgage, et cetera. And also when we never closed, not for a single day, maybe when it was first announced. So over the course of the last month, my wife, who runs the whole place, gradually is bringing back staff. Payroll protection allows whatever revenues are coming in to pay for other bills. So it's actually quite helpful in that whatever payroll is occurring. The other thing for independent owners to know too is that owner draws are also allowable under payroll protection plan, so that if you give yourself a draw every quarter or every month or whatever, that also qualifies according to our CPA for loans that are forgivable. So it's been a terribly useful tool, bit of paperwork to get, but well worth it. And it allows you some breathing space when we need it the most, right?
Travis?
Yeah.
This is Linda Curtis. I have been watching legislation, and there is legislation out there to change the payback period. I think it's like 8 or 10 weeks on the PPP, but they're trying to change that to possibly the end of the year so that it gives restaurants a chance to reopen when states reopen. So I know there's legislation out there to help restaurants with this.
Did you say, Linda, did you say that was pending?
They're putting bills together right now because they know that the time frame within the contract states that there's a payback time if it's not used within the guidelines. And I know they're trying to change that. There are some bills that are going in to help change that legislation to hopefully lengthen it till the end of the year to allow the businesses to reopen and kind of gain some strength back and get a good foundation before that has to be used up.
So can I ask a question real quick? Because I've got another meeting coming up, but this is for everybody. Anybody that's used the payroll protection. So I've heard mixed reviews on this. And one of the things that I keep hearing is employees are not liking that option because it takes them back to the original pay scale that they were at before, instead of getting the bonuses per se that they're getting on unemployment now. Has anybody ran into that issue? And if so, how have they dealt with it?
Robin Faulkner here from River Stop Cafe. We haven't been able to bring, well, I've kept my manager on full-time. And so that obviously takes care of her payroll. And I've had a couple of other employees that I've kept on part-time, and I'm bringing others back part-time. Even though they're collecting unemployment, apparently when they do their unemployment information, they say that they've worked so many hours and they're still collecting their unemployment. It may adjust their weekly unemployment, but apparently from what I understand, the $600 that they're getting a week is still there. So the employees are coming back knowing that they're still getting that extra money.
And the original time frame for using up this money is 60 days. So to Linda's point, she is dead on that the legislation should be passed that allows that money to be stretched out further in order to be forgiven as a grant.
Any other experience, or go ahead, Jennifer.
Sorry, I know Senator Schumer has this proposed origination date changing to the end of the year. So I would just like to encourage all chamber directors and EDOs to write letters to support, to advocate for our restaurants.
I know I had a restaurant client, we had gotten a PPP loan issued to them, and they just yesterday made the decision to just pay it back in full and not utilize it. They've, in their case, they aren't doing the carry out business. They're just kind of hibernating until they're able to reopen.
Hi, this is Mike Malkowski. I'm president and CEO of Star Ingenuity, Star Safety Shield. And I just want to circle back on the mitigation safety shields for restaurants. So we're in a big development program to try and get these launched, and I certainly understand reservation that restaurant owners have in spending the money and going down that path, knowing that the rules right now say 25% and 6 feet. However, we're working with 2 legislators here in Michigan to try and get this pushed through, and Governor Whitmer, she actually mentioned it in her town hall about seeing safety shields in restaurants. And what we know is that restaurants can't survive at 25 and 50%. And so I'm trying to, for lack of better words, get a coalition of restaurant owners together to help push and drive what will help restaurants survive. And I need your help. Again, I'm working through one end of the development of the shields and working with legislators, but I sure could use the assistance of restaurant owners and lodging owners that could help push from the other end so that we could drive what actually works for restaurants to make them survive versus just, for lack of better words, cowering down to whatever gets pushed back towards us saying, hey, this is the way it's going to be. Because right now, I think everybody realizes what's being pushed our way saying, hey, this is the way it's going to be, is not going to work.
For some owners, yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, so and to piggyback off that, Mary did put their information in the chat there for everybody to view. So if you're interested in reaching out, feel free to do that. The time has flown by. We're already closing up to 11 o'clock here. I guess one question I wanted to make sure I was able to ask Justin and Diane specifically before we wrap up, and I guess anybody else, is there anything that anybody has implemented like out of necessity now during this kind of crazy time that you're planning on keeping moving forward, just because it has either enhanced your business as it is, or it's just kind of a new revenue opportunity? Anybody?
Sorry, technical difficulties.
Oh, sorry.
I think what we're going to do, so as I said in the beginning, we didn't have, 2 to 3% takeout, right? So now our takeout business is our business, and so is that delivery aspect. So delivery, I think, is something that we're going to keep running in full fold. It was only supposed to be for Church and Main, but it is working very, very well for seasonal. So I think that is another revenue aspect that we need to focus on. And I don't think, even if, unfortunately, if they lift the ban or they do it incrementally, it's going to stick around. I mean, it's going to stay in people's minds for quite some time. So I don't think that even opening to 25 and 50% capacities, it may help some, but in my case, I really don't think it'll make that big of an effort, considering we're doing that right now between the delivery and the takeout aspects. So I think it's something that we need to look at, definitely. And I think that even running at 25 to 50%, there are too many factors that play into it. I mean, are you going to follow people to the bathroom to make sure there's only one person in the restroom? Are you going to have people monitoring the doorway so we only have certain amounts coming through? Booth aspects that sit back to back. So now you're doing every other booth. There's a lot of factors that play into this that I think we need to keep aware of.
I'd like to offer a couple of things from a consumer standpoint. I don't own a restaurant, but I'll tell you what I have really was drawn to from a purchasing standpoint. One, don't underestimate the value of social media during this time to sell your product, your plates. I literally will use Facebook, Twitter, and social media as how to decide what we're having for dinner on twice, 2 to 3 times a week for my family, because I get sick of making dinners at home and decide where I'm going to dine. And I'll tell you this: don't just assume I'm going to pull up the menu and weed through a menu. Post a picture of a feature dinner. Post a picture of something that it looks appealing. Don't just write dialogue. Post a picture of something. A visual is way more appealing than anything else. The other thing I'll say about social media and what you're doing, if you can do it for a family of 4, do it. I've seen that explode over just saying, hey, here's our prime rib dinner, order off the menu. You do a grouping of 4 for a special price or whatever, you're going to sell that 10 times more than you're going to sell. Here's our prime rib dinner, take a picture of it and order that. You're going to sell 10 times more than you normally would. And the last thing I'll say, curbside is great, but if you restaurant teams in your communities, if you can find a way to collaborate and deliver, I know Uber Eats and all these other ways, if you can find a way to deliver, the only way to get delivery in our area, you get pizza. That's the only thing that delivers. Find ways to make sure you're working with your team, and if you can do that, I think you'd find a huge uptick in your sales as well. My 2 cents.
Good points. And Travis, if you could possibly give us contact information with the people on the call, because I believe also I've always wanted my business plan to stay local, but I see, there's some great people on here that are within our community, and we have to work together because it's all going to change. Things are going to be different. Our business model and our business practices are going to be different going forward. And I believe the more we can network and communicate and try to work together and help each other out will be beneficial. So if you could share, it'd be great to know who in our community is on this call today and who we could work with.
Yeah, we can find a way to kind of share that out as well. And I think Colleen up in Newaygo County made a good point. This is a good opportunity to utilize the chambers and DDA, merchant associations, and that sort of thing in your communities to really kind of amplify the voice and what you're trying to do.
Travis, I have a quick thought before everyone disperses. I'm hearing restaurants actually giving back their PPP funds that they have been dispersed to. Does it seem logical that they change the allowable expenses for restaurants for PPE equipment upgrades? Possibly, if it's allowed, shields between booths. They're talking about the extra cost of those upgrades. Doesn't it make sense that those should maybe be allowed as expenses in the PPP loans?
I don't know, is anybody aware of that? I see Ed Garner from SBDC is on the call. Or Chelsea, you want to chime in if you know of any of that?
It's not currently, but I think that's a great idea. And the challenge with that program, I mean, everybody knows it's imperfect. It works for some, it doesn't for everybody. Hopefully it can be improved and made more flexible for especially the restaurant industry. The ones that are still operating, to some level, it may still be a viable program. I've seen others have more success with the disaster loan program, which I don't know that you can still apply for that right now, but that's not a forgivable loan, but it's definitely way more broad in what you can use it for.
It just seems logical if they're making upgrades for the safety of their employees, that should be an allowable expense.
Yeah, certainly a good point. That's for sure, Gay. Thanks for bringing that up. So we're a couple minutes after 11. Justin, Diane, any parting thoughts before we wrap up? I'm seeing shaking heads. No? Okay. All right. So with that, I will thank everybody for being here this morning. We do have a couple of more of these virtual roundtable sessions coming up, excuse me, tomorrow and Thursday. Tomorrow was focused on service businesses at 11 a.m. And then Thursday is a discussion with actually the VP of Pure Michigan, David Lorenz, about what rural tourism looks like post-COVID-19. So that's definitely one that kind of impacts all of us as well. So thanks again, everybody, for joining our conversation today. Please reach out to your chambers, your DDAs, us, your economic development professionals in your communities. We're here to help. We're here to assist in any way that we can. We will be sending out an email to everybody who was on today's call with a link to the recording of this, so you can go back to any of the comments, as well as a couple of other contacts and resources, that sort of thing. Thank you again for Diane and Justin for taking your time to be here today and kind of facilitate some of the discussion. And thank you, everybody. Be safe. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.